Hey, we're live on the Facebook channel, my Facebook channel, which is facebook.com Pam Electric Ghost, and we have singer-songwriter from New York City, Lulu, and we're gonna thank you for being on the show, Lulu.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we've been a podcaster since 2018, and we just started getting into video podcasting on StreamYard and Facebook because we find that fans actually get connected better through this type of podcast. So we find that this actually has a bit bigger impact.
Yeah,
So
we're all stuck at home somewhere, more or less.
Yeah, I guess everybody's used to a Zoom call.
Yes, definitely.
So it's not that different. But yeah, we can change angles a little bit, but here it looks better. Yeah, so you're Italian-born, Brooklyn-based songwriter and vocalist. I'm not going to try to miss your name. How do you say your first name? I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, but I mean, in the States, a lot of people mispronounce it, so I just go by Lulu. Also, sort of in real life, not just
that's why I figured.
Artist name. Yeah.
So it's like you've got a really striking voice, and what I found just from I'm a music historian, and I like what I like to listen to. I hear a little bit of Carole King, because I'm a big fan of Tapestry, and then a lot of I feel like a kindred spirit with Norah Jones.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great compliment. Norah Jones definitely has been an influence for me. Together with Amy Winehouse, Adele, this sort of voice and melody. Yeah, for sure. I'm more of a Motown girl, so the influences I had, I think, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, and all that, sort of music. But definitely Norah Jones, I really love her. She has
I like your singer-songwriter craft. I bring up that Carole King, because she was a big writer for a lot of that type of stuff. And the Motown references, I always tell people, I'm always listening to the drummers from Motown, because they were so core in a lot of those hits. Is how a Purdy Shuffle and all the other things that would go along with the Funk Brothers and the other stuff that was going on there. But is this so well crafted? And when you hear people, I use 808s, I use 909s, but there's nothing like a real drummer laying something down. And if you're doing that kind of sound, like an Amy Winehouse sound or a Norah Jones type of sound, it's kind of cool to have that real piano and a real, guitar.
Yeah,
it just feels more intimate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so I'll get into the opening question, which is always for every artist we talk to, is when did you first get into music? What age? And we can kind of start from there.
So big disclosure, I never really studied music. So I guess I always had a tendency and a lot of love for music. I used to listen to albums whatever time of day and night, even when I was a kid. Did the whole being part of choirs at school and playing with friends in the beach and stuff like that. So that's what how I started. When I was a kid, I've always been sort of insecure on music at first, especially when I was younger, because I never really studied. All my friends that were into music, they went to the conservatory and studied for 12 years, and then I had no really a background on that. So that has kept me always kind of shy on the music front. I guess when I was 18, 19. I started performing in my hometown, kind of out of nowhere. A few friends convinced me, and I did it. And then since then, my music school has sort of been performing in bars when I was younger, and from then, I'm here today.
I'm a strong believer in that, because my age, I'm at 52. I'm a child of the 70s, right? So I started before the net in garage bands and basement bands.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah, and it's kind of we were playing at pizza joints and playing in I lived in Western Mass, so we played in Amherst here, the UMass and all those colleges, the 5 college area, and that's, you know, at that time you think about like 78, 79, 80, like, you know, the beginning of the, well, punk and then new wave. And so I was kind of really inspired by like MTV generation and the punk
Yeah.
aesthetic, like the Clash. And so I was kind of like, okay, let's just do it ourselves. Let's go out there. And like, we felt the passion of like bands like the Clash. And I mean, I grew up listening to Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. And it was like kind of just absorbed everything. My dad was a big record collector. And
Yeah.
so like, I totally get that. I mean, I was trained on a clarinet, but that's not really a writing instrument.
Yes.
So they like when I jumped into like rock bands, like I wasn't formally trained. I didn't go to Berkeley. I'm like, but I just had a passion for it. Like most musicians, like you feel you got it, and you just feel like you got to do it, and you just go out, whether or not somebody trained you or not. You got. I hear your voice. You got it.
Yeah. Best feeling of, you know, having the connection like with the other people you're playing with, and it's just like, yeah, you feel like you have to do it and like you belong there in that moment. That's, I think, sort of like what we're all missing during this infinite year. Then it's not.
So you've been working on music since you discovered that you were a big fan. You know, as a teenager, you were into it. You were listening. And I think a lot of people realize like every musician is like a fan of other musicians. You know, like musicians kind of like,
maybe in the style. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of build each other up. Like we have our influences. You know, we have our own idols and people that we gravitate toward, and we naturally kind of like all my influences are bared when I'm playing. Like if I like Sun Ra, then I'm gonna have some jazz Sun Ra might show up in my work. You know, the Miles Davis might show up in my work. You know, some Parliament Funkadelic. Not that I'm trying to do that. It's just because you listen to so much that it just kind of comes through you.
Yes, no, for sure. I mean, I feel like I've done like a lot of listening, even more than singing or playing. I think the first like rule, if we have to put a rule for like musicians, is to just like listen a lot, both, you know, live. I mean, I live in New York, so before COVID, it had a great offering in terms of like shows, and you could really see like your idols here, which is like amazing. But also like listening to a lot of like records. I mean, it helps a lot putting together like your character as a musician and sort of defining like who you are musically.
Yeah, I mean, I end up going to New York because like New Hampshire is a cool place to live, but everybody's just like into folk music. Not that that's bad, but I'm an electronic experimental artist. I can't really get a good fan base here, so I have to usually go to Boston, around Fenway Park. They have some clubs there to do what I do. But then, you know, really New York, I played like 3 different type of clubs that do electronic music in New York City, and that's like my best bet. So I totally get it because New York has got the scene that you want. I mean, the only other scene I probably would get into is like LA, you know, the LA scene, or like for what I do, like the Berlin scene, you know, Berlin, or like, you know, is it really into like Brian, you know, David Bowie kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just cool that you're in that zone, but now because of COVID, you're kind of like, you guys can't take it fully advantage of it.
No benefits for this year of being here, but yeah, we'll just be patient a little more, I guess.
So being a fan of music, you heard what you wanted, you know, what you liked about it, and then you found a way to bring your own voice to it. Like, so you realized you had a talent, but I guess the question is like, not everybody who sings or even plays an instrument actually takes the step to write their own music. So how did that happen? Where did you start to feel like you wanted to do that?
So I've always like written a lot. I guess at first I wasn't really aware that I was writing music. I was just like writing all these lyrics, but they're still, as of today, sort of dispersed between post-its and like old notebooks and notes on the iPhone. So I've always like written a lot, that's for sure. Turning that into music, I guess it wasn't like too long ago. I mean, last year I released my first EP, and it was sort of a collection of songs that I had written over like the years. You know, some things that I found that I wrote, I don't know, 10 years ago, and then I was like, I'm gonna release it just because I want to have like something of mine out there. and then it becomes sort of like as an addiction, you know, like you release something and then, you know, people enjoy this, so you want to get them like more. So I have like tons of music that I wrote that never really has been released. I guess I was lazy to go to the studio, or did not believe in myself that much. But I'm working on that now, so I'm gonna make.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been listening to "Washed Away." Is that the EP you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that I love every track on it. I mean, I like "B," the last track, a lot.
Yeah.
I like the title track. The title. I mean, every track on here, like "Heart Open," "Teach Me." I'm like, everything is. I can feel like this the headspace. You've got that Motown feel. You've got the the Amy Winehouse. I can hear the influence. Like I said, like all musicians, we kind of pull our influences. Like I'm being a keyboardist, I pull like Bernie Worrell and Stevie Wonder and anybody as a keyboardist can name check them all. But like if you're gonna play synthesizer, you're gonna tend to be in a zone where people can kind of recognize where you're coming from. And yeah, this album is like really is an EP. It's really tight. I like the sound. I like the feeling. It's got a lot of heart.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I put a lot of heart into it for sure. And you know, it was sort of like arranged with like the other members of the band in just a few days. So we went to this studio upstate, which is also like the home of the piano player in the band, Luke Celenza, and they did an amazing job understanding like what I wanted to express and like how I wanted certain like melodies to be. Because honestly, like I just bought a keyboard to help myself like writing music
Like demos.
after I went to the studio, because it was sort of, I mean, they were very like understanding and they perfectly got what I was trying to express, but I was like, I need to be able to write like my own chords and to better express like what the direction of the song that I want is going to be. So then I still haven't taken officially any piano lessons. I know that I should, but I started just playing out of ear and just
that's
helping me
not
write more.
yeah, that's not a bad thing. If you think about that, at least African American musicians, like we didn't really get to go to Berkeley.
Yeah,
the history of all the blues musicians, none of them could sight read. Later they did. They got capabilities, but the first like bluesmen and a lot of rockers, up to Hendrix, they couldn't read. But it's like it's a feeling. It's always been kind of like if you got the chops or you got the heart or you've got the passion, you find the notes, you can kind of play by ear. It's kind of a thing. It's not a bad thing, I think. So sometimes people who aren't formally trained can look at music in a different way. You can actually do things that people say, well, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. But then because you do it differently, you become unique. You do different phrasing, you do different chord choices, you do things that maybe people wouldn't have done. And then it becomes, oh, wow, that's innovative. So it's not I don't think it's a bad thing.
To just have, sort of like a new perspective. I think, having like a base of like studying for sure it can help just express yourself better. But I also get what you're saying to, have sort of fresh eyes, more like naive. It's just I feel like the music industry is very like competitive nowadays, especially like in the type of music that we do. So it's sort of like expected that you know what you're doing like 100%, because there's like another 2 billion people that do. But then it depends like what goals you have. Well, I make music because like it makes me happy. I'm glad that other people enjoy, but if they didn't, I would still do it. So
yeah, there's something to be said. Like I understand, like if you think about like a Phil Spector, or you think about like the Motown era, and some of that construction was like very well planned, but a lot of it because these guys were like jazz guys. They were like bebop, jazz, blues guys, and they kind of had a lot of feel. A lot of it was feel. A lot of it was just, okay, how we're gonna get a hit, but it's kind of like you got the chops or you don't. Like you can go to all the schools you want, and you could technically write music on the grid on a DAW and make it totally perfect. But my whole point is like if you listen to like a Neil Young song from the '70s, you put it into a DAW, it's not perfect at all. It's got all kinds of timing issues. It's got, key changes, all kinds of things that you would say, well, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
The same thing if you listen to the Stones. You listen to Keith Richards, he doesn't stay in his rhythm like modern guitar players. He's kind of all over the place. But that is kind of the character. And some of the things today where I think they're getting too clean in production and maybe too perfect. Because a lot of the great parts of music, even in classical music, all forms of music, are the actual errors, or little happy accidents that you suddenly do that make it like endearing, that make you want to listen to it because it's got something that's different. If you think of like
like,
if you think about like Prince, like when Doves Cry, when Warner Brothers heard it, they say, well, "Where's the bass line?" Right? He didn't put the bass line. And a lot of his songs were like demos, and they would always the producers would come up to him and tell him, "You can't put that out. It's not finished." And he said, "Well, it is finished." And it's like he held his ground on a bunch of songs, and he was able to kind of push things in a way. Because if you look at Kiss, the way that's structured, it's kind of like a demo. A lot of his best songs have things about it that people today wouldn't do.
Yeah.
They still wouldn't do, even though he did that. They still won't do it because, like, well, that's not the way you're supposed to do it.
But it still came great records out of it. So
yeah. So I mean, I've always been the proponent of like, okay, yeah, you can have all this background, and it's good to know theory as much as you can, but I don't get too caught up in it. Like, if you can take theory and improve your music, and you can take your chops and you learn different voicings. Like people will say, well, take some Beatle chords, which means you're going to make the chords a little bit more interesting than just a minor or major chord. You're going to do something that's a little more subtle. That's cool. But like getting too into it is like sometimes you got to let it breathe and let things just be. And like when the people who love music, they create music that people tend to find. The people will find you and say, wow, you've got something. So your audience, like, because the world is so open, people will find the things that they're really in tune with. And so like, you don't need 1,000 copies of the same type of song. That's kind of boring.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect, or then it's like listening to the same song over and over. So
yeah, because some producers will go and they'll go and make that song like 10, 20, 30 times the same song.
Yeah.
Because it was a hit, that's fine. But then as an audience, I actually look for something that's different. That's why I talk to people in the independent world more than the top tier, because it's more interesting in this space. Because you get to find people who are really got a lot of heart and do it because they love it, not because they're trying to get to some idea of what they success. So I think stick with what you're doing. I think it's the right way to do it, because if you believe in it, people will tend to go to the people that believe in themselves and have a passion about what you're doing. So the other thing, we talked about your influences, but maybe you can expand on it if we haven't already covered it. If we did, then we can skip to the next thing. But like in terms of the type of music you're into and your
so I mean, Motown, I already said it, like definitely like a big influence and all the artists that came with it. Then sort of like because I'm very much into soul music. I guess you would define my style as like new soul nowadays. So a lot of influences from like Erykah Badu and like D'Angelo. I also share the last name.
Yeah, that neo soul. You've got that neo soul vibe too. Yeah.
So that vibe, I love it. It's like the best for me in terms of like soul and R&B. I'm also like a huge fan, and they do have definitely like an influence on me of like a later like soul wave, which is the one of now, like Anderson .Paak and like Thundercat, Napalm, and all of that. Her.
I think people can just appreciate, if you think about Stax and Motown and some of those old labels, it's just like you listen to Otis Redding, you listen to some of the go listen to the Shy Lights, you listen to like the Delphonics. Like I'm a big fan of like the Delphonics just because they had all this the falsetto. It's kind of like that Smokey Robinson falsetto that you get out of these soul groups that really focused on voices.
Yeah.
And they had really good instrumentation, but you're in that kind of tradition that the voice is the instrument. Your voice is your instrument, and then you also have really good musicians around you, and then that just like to me is like the full package, because it doesn't, not that drum machines and sequencers and synthesizers are like that's what's going on. The people are using hip hop, they're using samplers, they're using all kinds of stuff, and I'm into that. And I do use it because I'm an electronic musician. But I think some people forget that electronic music is not just like a CDJ or a DAW. I go back to people like Genesis and Yes and Pink Floyd. That's the kind of electronic music I talk about, not just like a DJ, but somebody had a big stack of Moogs and Hammond B3s and all these like real instruments that you can be very expressive on. So it's like the whole idea in music, if you can be expressive, if you're DJs, they can be very expressive, and hip hop producers can be very innovative and can do things that are cutting edge. But I guess as a fan, I do like the genre you're in because it is kind of heart based. It's soul based.
Yes.
Definitely. So when you write, like now you got the keyboard. So now, what were you doing before you got the keyboard to do your demos? Were you just putting them together like on a tape or on your phone?
Yeah, basically all on the phone. Very like a professional. I'm not here to like give advice to fellow singers, but I was just like recording what I was thinking the melody should be with my voice, writing the words, and then I don't know, just like whenever I met with somebody that I was like there's also like a lot of songs that I sort of like wrote and played with friends but never really arrived to the studio. Maybe one day they will, but I guess it was always easy to be understood, probably because I always had to deal with like pretty good like musicians who when you play with each other even for like lives and you have like that good feeling and connection, is sort of like easy to explain even without having a chart. So I never really had.
Yeah, I think it's like classic thing. Like if you're a singer and you believe in what you're doing and you've got the lyrics,
people will follow. Like
if you go, I watched a documentary on Amy Winehouse and her two sets of producers that she did on Back in Black, and she came in with just like an acoustic guitar, was laying things down real simple, and then the producers, one of them had kind of a DJ background, but the cool thing about the DJ background was he knew how to get hooks into what she was doing. Like, so she had all the stuff on acoustic guitar, and then he kind of heard like the licks or the types of phrasing that should go with it, and knew what would make it more of a hit. Then the original versions are perfect. They're great. I mean, but some of the stuff, it was more like folk music. That it was like very indie kind of folk, but then it changed into this kind of soul music. It was like it's like the Phil Spector thing.
If you have a good producer, I think they have like a magical, ear or just like perception of things that project whatever like you send them or share with them in another level that
So did that,
for example, never come up with.
So. Did that happen when you met? Like, was it more that the band interpreted your stuff and the band came up with it, or was it the producer that kind of drove it?
So for Watch the Way, it was we had like two pretty intense like days of rehearsal like all together. And so the Giacomo is the bass player of the band, is the one that helped me like writing all the charts and everything. So it definitely like understood what I was saying or trying to say more than anyone. But a lot of things, then, when you get to the studio, you sort of like change them and adapt them at that minute. So that was sort of like a common feeling, just doing takes, like, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And so some things, we changed some lyrics or some, directions, or added some like harmonies here and there. And that was all decided like in the studio. Um,
So did you guys record it like a traditional like 1970s kind of style where the full band was playing, or was it more like overdubs?
No, so we did like do it pretty traditionally. So they did like the instrumental, and like they were amazing because basically they did maybe like one or two takes.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was the trouble, so I, like as all singers, like
Yeah.
it's stereotyped, like I don't like this, I don't like this, let me redo this. So over and over. But yeah, we got everything done in like 3 days, the recording. So I think we were pretty good.
That's really. I think that's a problem. I mean, sometimes today you get people that take like 3-4 months, 6 months, a year to do something. Not that they can't do something great. You think about Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, took like 6 months because
Yeah,
he's doing all this layering. But the thing is, sometimes it's like the honesty. Like if you have your idea and it's just trying to express it, there's a certain cutoff point where like by the 100th take, you probably like lose a lot of the original intent.
yeah, I agree. Also because it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes like I still, when I listen to it, I'm like, but this, I could have
You could have
done
fixed it.
different.
Yeah, you could have
And
fixed
it's
it.
like a never-ending
You're
feeling.
like your own worst critic, right? Because you're like
Yes,
well, you don't like the version you put out because you're like, yeah, you were still working on it, but then
yeah,
you had to like, you finally had to decide, okay, this is gonna be it. And that's when you play it live, you can make your choice to like make it the way you want it.
yeah. And then live, it always changes. Like I feel like all the songs, whether it's like cover songs or like my own that I've done live, it's never like the same version, and that's like the fun of playing live, I think.
Well, I think yeah, that's something I think it gets lost today in the kind of DAW world. Is like, I'm kind of a big fan of like bands like Allman Brothers and the funkadelic bands, if you think about Earth, Wind and Fire, they would go on stage. I mean, they had their songs, and everybody knew their hits, but they would improvise, and you would have the core of the song, but every time you went to see them, it would be a little bit different, and that's kind of like the whole reason why you wanted to see them. Where in some places now, you got bands that are kind of like stuck on their backing tracks, and they're kind of locked in when they go to play. They kind of they're not free to go outside of the constructs of the song because they've gotten themselves so tied to the song they can't break out of it. And then that's cool if you want to hear the same thing every night. But I think it's kind of, as a musician, I find it very boring.
Yeah, you sort of, I don't know, I guess maybe that's also tied to the fact that I don't know music like on the learning side that much. So for me, like every live of one song, it's like a different thing. Depends, maybe like even how you're feeling. Something you might sang it like more, like fun and like upbeat, and then the same like could be more like chill and jazzy version. I think we have a lot of like room to do
Yeah,
different things.
I love that room. I think that's the room that some people have kind of forgotten,
Yeah.
that it's really, because I collect a lot of music, right? And I have all these Hendrix performances. And the cool thing about Hendrix is like every time he did a solo, it was never the same. I mean, he had the general structure, but you'd want to hear like every live performance Hendrix ever did.
Mm-hmm.
And I collect them just because every approach they took was always like, it was based on how he felt. And so like in some days, if he was angry or something, you could kind of feel he was frustrated. If he was happy, you kind of feel this different feeling. He was kind of chill. So you get that feeling coming out of that, like just like a singer, lead guitar players and stuff. You can feel where their head's at.
Mm-hmm.
and that's, in horn players, you can feel that, like a Coltrane,
Yeah.
people like that, you can feel the mood. And that's like, that's what to me is like a painter,
Mm-hmm.
or, an actor, if they do a live performance on a stage, depending how they feel that night, is how they're going to approach the character. Uh, I think that's real important in music to do that.
Yeah, that's the best, I think. Honestly, like this room that we were talking about, the space to just, get creative. And especially like if you see that the audience is like feeling you and the same vibe that you're, experiencing or trying to give, that's like the best feeling. And I think it's like the thing that is missed most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you play live, don't you, as a singer, you kind of feed off the audience. Like, if the audience has you feeling a certain way, you're going to sing that song because of the venue you're in, the
Yeah.
vibe you're getting from the people, like the acoustics of the place. So there's all these things. It's like, oh wow, it's like this place sounds like this. So if I do this with my
Yeah.
voice, it's going to give me this effect. So I can go and do this. And this audience is really into what I'm doing. So I can kind of, it just that feedback. Like if you try to do a live stream,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you can do a kind of unplugged thing, and it's very, I guess it's passionate, and it's kind of, intimate to do that, but you're missing that audience component. So it's all
Yeah.
coming from like you, and you
Yeah.
don't get anything from the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I've attended several like live shows of other artists during this year. I haven't done mine, but I am. It's coming up.
Well, you're gonna do it. You're
Tell
gonna
you
do
more
one.
about it later. But I always feel bad, like when I'm like watching someone, and then when they end like one song or something, I feel like, but nobody's there, so like let them feel what they're feeling. And I feel so sad that they end the song and then they have no idea like what people reaction is. And it's hard, I think, to then continue and like keep the show on with the complete like silence of your apartment or like the theater,
Yeah,
whatever.
I've kind of thought that since the pandemic came about, that they should, all these streaming services, to provide the ability for artists to go live, to
Mm-hmm.
do something like when people hit the heart button, it would be cool if that would feed back to the artist, like clapping or
Yeah.
cheering, or so you could hear something. So
Yeah.
if they're actually reacting, and the audience can react, because I'm a technical guy, they can actually send hearts. They could go and say they like,
Yeah.
and then if that fed back into your monitor,
I
or you,
think some have that feature, like even like virtual clapping or something. But I don't know. It'd definitely be cool if like they could, unmute the mic just for 10 seconds and be
yeah,
like,
and you hear them
and
like
then,
actually doing the
yeah,
woo woos,
like
or they hear the
clapping.
clapping. Like if you actually could hear the clapping, or make it
Yeah.
sound, I think my whole thing is make it sound as close to like a live experience. Like, so
Yeah,
you
would be
include like a virtual capability that gives you audience feedback that feels not fake,
yes,
but feels real enough
real.
that
Hmm.
you would like, wow, it's not just like a laugh track
Yeah,
on a sitcom. It's something that actually makes you feel that
they,
the audience is involved,
yes.
which I don't think is impossible to do, but people probably haven't focused on it
Hmm.
because it's like they rather just play live.
Yeah.
um, but so like it sounds like you don't, like, as the type of artist you are, you don't use like a DAW to put your, like, a digital audio workstation. You're not
No,
using
I
like,
saw the question and I was like, I'm just gonna
yeah,
say it. Like, I mean, I know that like most people that I collaborate with use Logic,
yeah.
which I honestly have, but I just
You
never
don't like it.
have explored the word. I mean, I have like just recorded some lines, vocal lines to send to other artists, like through the like
Oh,
Focusrite,
yeah. So if you
but
want to collab
every
with people, you
time
have
I
to
have
put
to
stuff
like
down.
ask for help because I'm like really bad at all the things that are like linked to technology, especially like in the music world. I feel like they're super complicated, so I rather like refer
Yeah,
them to the professionals.
that's strange. Because, well, it's not strange because I started off using just tape recorders back in the '90s and the '80s. I used
Mhm.
to use like Fostex and Tascam trackers, right? And I'm a technical guy. I got into DAW and then I'm like, I didn't like it. So I actually use hardware recorders. I kind of do old fashioned stuff. I have all my synthesizers and stuff, but they're all connected to no computers at all. I just record directly to like tape type machines. Just because I like,
it's more like what I would do if
just because I want to be able to do the song the way I want, and I don't want to have to sit on a laptop. I just have all these hardware machines that can record right at my synth. So right at the keyboard, I can get to what I want. I don't have to stop.
Yeah.
And I find that to me, if I go and sit on the computer, it doesn't feel like I'm writing. So I'm like, I'd rather be at the piano writing than be on a computer. I can't handle it. So
yeah, awesome.
I get what you're doing. I'm kind of, people say, well, that's harder.
You're also an IT person, so you probably know more about.
Yeah, I just decided I didn't like all the choices. I think there's so many choices on the DAW.
A lot, yeah.
That it kind of distracts you from being. I think sometimes having limitations as an artist, if you limit all those choices to like okay, all I have is my piano, all I have is my guitar, and then later I can play with effects, I can play with stuff. But if I'm just trying to get the heart of what I'm doing, I think it's better to have some limitations to like control where you kind of focus to get to the heart of what you're trying to get across.
Yeah, then you get lost, the things you could do, and you end up doing.
Yeah, then you're gonna be like spend like 2 days just trying to get an effect ready. Instead of like trying to get the chords right. Yeah, so that's cool. I totally am into that because so you've done a little bit of that. So you do top lines maybe with people. You do extra work. You work with people. You collab.
Yeah. So usually, I mean, I usually sort of rely on other people for this sort of like more technical stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
So when you were playing live, I'm assuming you were just playing around New York, or did you go outside of New York? You went to Italy too, in France?
Yes. So, I mean, I definitely did start playing in Italy. I had this friend who played guitar just, around in pubs, and he's also like a great singer. And he sort of like convinced me to do this, and I started playing with him. And I was like super shy. I didn't want to do that. But then I started we had very good feedback, and I was like 19, I think. And we were doing like a lot of shows per week, not like big venues, but still, it was a very good school of music and just learning how to like interact with musicians.
It's like trial by fire. I mean, doing it, I always tell people like if you actually just do it, anytime you have something, it's like you just get into the act of doing the work. And if for a musician, it's not really work; it's kind of like it's love.
Yeah, and then it's fun, like it's your passion, so you're super excited when you do it. But it took a lot of convincing, but I'm glad that it did.
Well, I'm glad they convinced you to do it because you really have. I think you've got an awesome like whole concept of what you're doing. And the way you carry it off is like everything you're doing is very authentic, and it has feeling. And I think that's core in music is to feel like the artist really believes what they're doing. When I hear you singing your lyrics, it feels like you really believe
the best feedback I think that an artist can get. So thank you. But so I mean for the playing, Italy, I mean quite extensively. I mean more like in Sicily, which is where I'm from. I moved for university to Paris when I was 21. And in Paris, I joined a gospel choir, which was the best musical choice.
That gives you a lot of training right there. That's like going to school.
That was great.
That's school.
My voice never sounded as great as when I was in that choir, because like just the type of performance that you have to do, like you train your voice a lot, and the songs are all like, you can feel them, and I just loved it. And then I was just playing with my band there at the time, just around in France, Paris mostly, and then I moved to New York like 6-7 years ago. And it's been sort of on and off with music because like the New York scene is very like overpopulated. So to play like in the cool spots where you go to listen to other people, usually you have to go to a jam session on a Monday at 1 a.m. to get yourself seen, and then maybe they'll call you, and it's all these like steps that sometimes like I'm willing to do when I have the time to do, and sometimes I'm just like I'll just play to like a local bar in Brooklyn and be happy with it. And yeah, I mean, it's more for me about like making music and like how I feel when I make it than getting like the attention from external people. So New York is definitely like a tough scene, and you have to be on top of things a lot to play like extensively. But yeah, I mean, I've had my share of like good gigs here. Of course, none almost in the last year. Mostly like private, events, but nothing
So are
crazy.
you feeling that this year, because people are getting vaccinated,
Mm-hmm.
and are you thinking by by mid summer or fall you might be able to do what you did before?
I mean, I've been making, sort of like promises to myself, like, I'm not able to do this now, but I'm sure like in 6 months it will be better. I mean, since COVID started, in March we were saying like, in summer it will probably be okay, and then in summer we were like, by Christmas it will probably be
Yeah,
okay.
it keeps on getting pushed out. Yeah.
Yes. So now I'm just like, shh, nothing. I'm not saying anything, but
So
I hope
yeah.
that with the vaccine we can go back to a little bit of normality. I mean, at least in New York, they are trying to lift most of the restrictions. Like, movie theaters are opening back again, and like restaurants are open at I think 25 or 50 capacity inside. So it's definitely going in a good direction. I have at the same time the example of home where my family is in Italy, which is going crazy. Like they keep being put on lockdown and the cases are still rising. So that's
Yeah, I was
a
wondering,
mess.
do you think you could get back to Europe to do anything, but if they're still having some trouble?
Yeah, so that's why I hope that with the vaccine, we get this sort of like health passport or whatever they
Yeah,
call it.
yeah, there's supposed to
So
be
we
a
can travel.
a passport that says that you
Yeah,
got the
you got the
vaccine,
vaccine.
and then you have to show that you passed the test, and then once they
Yeah,
have that, then I think things are going to get better. It just
hopefully.
yeah. I mean, I had this story where like I finally got a booking agent where I
Uh-huh.
could go to like Denmark, or I could go to like Berlin, I go to London. I finally got him, and then COVID happened like right when I got the agent.
Oh no.
So it's like
I mean, I'm sure like the opportunities I think have just been put on hold. So
yeah,
hopefully,
yeah.
everything
So
will be still there. Whether it's at the end of this year or this summer. I mean, I hope it's like tomorrow, just because I think we could all like use going back to not maybe 100% normal. I don't think it's gonna happen like that, but just
but
a
I
little
found
bit of how it was before.
yeah. But
Yeah.
one thing I found was like sometimes like the international audiences
Hmm.
are more accepting of like new artists or certain types of music. And I always found that like if my audience even online, I have more fans like in Norway and
Hmm.
in the Netherlands and Denmark and Israel and
And
all
here,
these other places like Australia. And in the US I might have pockets like in New York and Los Angeles, but I get more people that are into what I'm doing. Like even in like Korea and Japan and parts of
yeah.
China, I get people that are into what I'm doing. But so it seems like yeah, as a musician, sometimes you gotta like, okay, I don't just target locally. I have to like target like globally.
Yeah. Yeah, that for sure. And I mean, Italy, like now there's like this new wave of like new soul artists, but it's kind of like recent because before there wasn't really this style of music. I mean, some great ones that sort of like initiated it, but then it's mostly like pop and good pop, and like also a very bad like new pop. Uh,
Yeah,
but now there's like a lot of great artists, so I feel like, you know, in Italy I would be more
yeah.
understood.
That's what I feel like
Now.
I just like when I go if I go to London or if I go to Berlin, like there's more people that are into like really kind of eccentric electronic music than like 10-minute songs, kind
Yeah,
of like yes, and that's kind of like where my space is at. I do these songs that are like 1970s like Queen songs. Not that I'm covering them, but it's more like I'm not trying to just do a 2-minute song.
yeah,
A lot,
yeah.
yeah, a lot of the
It's
bands that I'm
totally.
into do the kind of extended like little mini rock operas. So
Hmm.
there's like a Pink Floyd type of stuff, and that stuff is like it's a different type of audience. It's more of a live audience
Yeah,
because those audience are want to see a band that can actually play these songs that are that long,
yeah,
or that interesting, and are not just like little club bangers here and there. Not that that's bad, but it's a different type of thing. Just like what you're doing is different. It has that kind of soul, like new soul is like neo
hmm,
soul is like traditional soul. It's not like necessarily like a minute and a half. It's whatever it's
yeah,
going to be to make the song.
yeah. There, I feel like even for like, you know, new soul, there's always like this sort of like pressure that now you have to, you know, have one structure, like, you know, A B,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, you can really get out of it. Or like if the song is for the like, I don't know, 3 minutes, it's like, oh my god, like what are you doing? But I don't. I think one of the songs like in my latest album is like 5 minutes, which is like for
yeah.
sound incredibly
Yeah,
long. I couldn't care less. You know, I
yeah.
think
Right,
like
your producers, as soon as they see it's over
even
3 minutes, they're like, no.
yeah, but then you know some people did it and like we loved it. I mean, like Queen and like
Yeah,
Pink.
I mean, they told Queen that Bohemian Rhapsody they
Yeah,
couldn't even put
it's
it out.
like the
But,
longest. Yeah,
so what they did is they made a video, and then they got the video on TV, and then the record stations did not want to play it, but then the video came
yeah,
out, and the video was shown on TV, and then suddenly this was like before MTV, and
hmm,
it suddenly is like, oh, and the
yeah,
same thing kind of happened with like the Eagles and Hotel California. Okay, that's
yeah,
like 8 minutes long, 8 9 minutes long, and in the '70s, they had radio programmers that would tell you should only do 3 minutes. But
yeah,
then the '70s, you see all these songs are like five. Dylan has songs that are 7 minutes long. Springsteen has songs that are
yeah.
like 8 minutes long. There's a lot of songs that break that rule, even in the middle of an era that said that was the rule.
Yeah, I enjoy honestly long songs. Like if you really like a song or a style, like you know, you never really want it to end, so why not make
Yeah.
it even
Well,
10
if you're
minutes?
telling a story,
But I guess
sometimes
commercial song, like if you want to be more like commercial, you have to sort of stick with
yeah, if you want to be in the top
the
20, you got to probably be under 3 minutes. But
yeah.
if you're looking for something that maybe has lasting value from a critical standpoint. Like you look at like
Hmm.
what Rolling Stone and Spin Magazine and Billboard when they're actually giving like 5-star reviews,
Yeah,
or they're always usually giving it to bands that have songs that are longer than 3 minutes.
yeah, yeah. No, I get that. But yeah,
so
we
so it's like
what we
so
feel.
yeah, I mean so the critics tend to like the things that maybe the public doesn't like.
Yeah,
but but and sometimes that doesn't make the artist a lot of money. It's like Lou Reed used to complain that like everybody, all the critics love him, but he never made any money.
yeah,
Because
that's
the
also
critics just said he was awesome, and he's like, well, they're not buying it. you know.
yeah.
But he was able to find a way to get successful despite of that, just because his kind of poetry of his
Mhm.
music eventually became so significant that he got advertising deals, he got other things that happened. And that seems like one of the questions I have, like in music. There's a lot of things because the way musicians have to deal with streaming services and not being on labels and not getting advances or
Mhm.
not getting this. Um, how do you kind of navigate that? I guess like in terms of some people like I've been getting into like sync licensing, trying to get my music into movies and stuff because I do instrumental stuff I can do. So
Yeah.
Maybe it's not my name brand, but maybe I can do 30 seconds to get into some ad, you know.
Mhm.
So have you
Yeah,
thought about
that's a
like
good,
that type of stuff?
great skill to have for sure. I mean, streaming services is like a must, I think, for any like artist that just wants to get their music out there. Um, I mean, I did, for example, like I have a vinyl record of my own record that came out last year, which, you know, like I put in, like they sell it at Rough Trade, like in Brooklyn,
Hmm.
and like I sold a few copies of my own, and but it's a very like niche market, so you know, streaming services definitely like are a must, but they pay like crap, so
Oh
uh,
yeah.
I,
That's,
you know, it's, but you know, everyone listen to music on those platforms because then, you know, you listen to music like at home when you're like running, cooking, whatever, and most people just want like the easiest option, and you know, they pay like whatever they pay to get like Spotify Premium or things like that. The fact that like these streaming platforms do not reward artists like at all, because I mean, even people that make uh, a billion listens, like
yeah,
super
they're not.
famous artists, they still don't make
Yeah,
like
I mean,
from,
this age is so different because like it used to
yeah,
be, if you sold like 500,000 copies, you made pretty good money. You know, you do 500,000 streams, you won't get that much at all. You
no, I
you
mean,
have to get,
exactly.
even if you get millions of streams, and the only thing that happens is like the top tier artists, like if you're Taylor Swift and you do 20
Yeah,
million streams, you get a higher rate
yeah,
than us because we're on a different tier.
yeah, but still, you know, when you do like 20 millions, it's still like nothing
Or
compared to
yeah,
what
it's
it
not
should
to
be.
what it was when people actually had to buy your CD. When people
Yes,
bought your CD, you got more. But even then, some of the record companies were giving you like 10 cents.
yeah, 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 no,
You
it's
had a $10 record and they give you like 10 cents.
yes,
You know,
no,
so a $16 CD and they were giving you like what 99 cents out of $16. That was even back
yeah,
then. They were kind
crazy.
of running things in a way. And so that it's I think what's happened now is a lot of artists they're like, okay, well, I'm doing it myself. And if I can get like a website and I can get like
Hmm.
touring and I can get my fans to be dedicated, I can get them to buy t-shirts and buttons
Yeah, yeah,
and posters, and you make more money off of the merch than
yes,
you do off of the music. And that's always been disappointing to me because to me, the real, what we're trying to give to people is the music, not the t-shirt and
hmm,
not the
yeah,
button. And we would like to actually get paid for the work that we actually believe in the most, not like the ancillary work, you know.
yes, no, that's for sure. I mean, I this is the main reason, I guess, why I never really looked for a, a label, you know, to support my work, because I didn't really want to deal with all the BS. So
Yeah,
uh,
we end
I
up
never
owing them
really
money.
put my head into it. Yeah, so I think like I'll keep like doing what I'm doing. The also another reason I feel like is that you know, like when you're like on a label, or even like if you're an affirmed like artist, you have now, like in the recent few years, maybe the last one, uh all this pressure that you have to like constantly release music, and I think that sort of kills what the creative process should be. Like I shouldn't have, you know, like a label telling me like, you know, you release a single now, then one in like 1 month and a half, to keep the audience, you know,
Yeah,
engaged. That sort of kills why we do this and the way we do
yeah.
it. So
I think it's like it seems like if you go back to the 50s and even like the Motown era, there was this thing where they actually did try to release like
yeah,
every week, every
yeah,
two
yeah, yeah,
weeks, every 3 weeks. 'Cause Barry Gordy, you know, he wasn't trying to be a jerk, but that was just kind of the marketing strategy. Is
yeah.
okay if this song doesn't hit, then we got to do another
We
one.
made another one. Yeah,
And so it seems like the world with Spotify and all these streaming services has kind of gone back in time to like 1956,
yeah,
57, and we're in the same model because back then everything was single based. right? So everything today is kind of
Yeah,
single based.
it
And
is.
yeah, and
Mm.
albums used to get composed of all the hits, and then they would put them together and say, "Oh, this is an album." And
Yeah,
it wasn't until like the Beatles they actually started getting albums that actually had a flow, and then people started to clone that concept as, "Oh, well, albums should have a theme."
hmm,
And then you have the era from like the late '60s to like into the '90s of the album era, where like, people's projects had a sense of continuity, even if the songs didn't make a story. All
yeah,
the songs in that project fit together, and you
hmm,
kind of want to listen to the whole thing. Like when I listen to your EP, I want to listen to the whole thing. I don't want to just take a song and then put it on a playlist with 10 other people. I kind of want to listen to
yeah.
what you're trying to say.
I feel the same. And honestly, like a lot of artists that took, years to put albums together, I'd rather like, wait and get that like whole product that makes you experience something instead of like, I'm not a huge fan of all these, singles coming out every like 2 months, but at the same time, I understand where that's coming from because it's what people are expecting now. And there's, you release something and people are the day after, like, so when
Or
you
they
say,
want the next
oh,
thing. Yeah, they say it's
yeah,
like we're in the age of instant gratification because I think what used to be, and I remember back in the '70s, like I wanted to go get a record, I'd have to get on a bus or get a ride
yeah,
to get my car and drive to a record store,
mm-hmm,
go looking inside, like how much money am I going to actually spend? Because I only have so much money to get
yeah,
maybe one or two things, right?
yeah.
Barely
That's
one.
a good feeling. Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, and then they put all your money to get this one record, then you brought it back home, and you listen to it until you like wore it out,
Yeah.
and it was like, and it was a whole experience because like you were connected to the artist because like I was buying vinyl, and I bought Purple Rain on vinyl when it
Wow.
came out, and it was like I just sat there and I was like the first time I heard that record, I'm like, wow, this is like because it didn't sound like 1999. It didn't sound like what he had done before. It was like a total departure of what he had done. He had all this rock music coming into it. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Cause I was a big Hendrix fan. I said, well, he's kind of going Hendrix. And then I was like, I just couldn't believe it. And I just kept on listening and listening. And I just feel like today, maybe the kids today don't get that experience to
Yeah.
like feel that
There's
this
too much
artist is
stuff available. I feel like it's the same. Like now they were, all sort of stuck at home, and you turn like Netflix on, and you say like nothing is on. Like there's nothing I want to watch, and
But
there's
there's
like
like
a million
3,000 things on,
things.
but there's nothing on.
Yes, so it's the same. It's like having too much offer, then it makes you like,
Feel like
more
there's nothing. Yeah.
doubtful and you don't know what you want. And yeah, it's sort of the same, I think, with the streaming services. But then, we have to use them because that's where
It's
everyone.
kind of like the radio. I kind of look at the streaming services,
Hmm.
because I kind of, the way I got into it, like I got into this podcast because I'm a musician and I actually do better on my podcast than my
Hmm.
music, but it helps my music. And so it ended up being like a really good situation where it's like, okay, if I do this podcast, then I get to talk to other musicians. I actually get paid better than I do doing my music, and then it gets people to like get into my music that wouldn't have gotten into my music. And so it
Yeah,
ended up being another way to kind of do something. And it seems like today you got to find a way to integrate what you're
yes,
doing to get it to another level. I see people trying to get their music into video games, people trying to get their music into YouTube,
movies and yeah,
movie, get it on TikTok, get it into reels. There are people that will take your music and put it on a reel or put
yeah,
it on a TikTok, and then you actually get a higher rate if somebody puts your music into a reel on Instagram or into a TikTok. You'll actually get a
yeah.
higher rate than you
Then
do
a
on
stream on
Spotify.
Spotify. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, that's crazy.
So it's
Yeah,
like, okay, well
yeah,
that doesn't make a lot of sense to me,
I
but
know.
I
It's
guess
just,
that's the way it's working.
yeah, it's a lot of energy. I feel that it's needed nowadays to be, fully an artist like 24/7, because you have to find sort of like complementary things that would go with just the music that you can like, you know, sell or promote, because the music is just not enough if you want to get, you know, at the end of the month and like
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
bills and
Almost
everything.
every musician I know has a day job, and depends on what kind of day job they
Yeah.
have. You know, to support what they're doing. I tend to have a pretty good one, but um, yeah, I know guys that are more hardcore, and they'll just okay, I'm gonna live out the van. I'm gonna tour like 300 days a year, you know, and they
Yeah.
were surviving like that before COVID. They were like, okay, well, I'm just
Mhm.
gonna hit every small venue I can in this van with my group, and we're just doing a totally dedicated, like on the indie scene, like they go
Yeah.
to Seattle, or you go to these, you know, like hard, like punk rocker type people, and
Yeah.
they just go to the scene, and they just force themselves into it and just dedicate it. And it's a way of doing things. It's just hard to do
Yeah.
that right now.
If you, I mean, also love that type of life, I think it's the best, because you do like all the time what you want to do, and then at a certain point you don't care about money that much, because like all you want to do is that, and you know
Yeah,
you
you
don't
kind
really
of
have
make
your
your life
time. You're just
smaller. I think you have to make your life a little bit smaller to do that dedication. Like you have
yeah,
to say, well, I don't need this and I don't need that. I'm going to focus on this. But a lot of times people are like, well, I want this, I want that, so then I can't do this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot to do with personality, I think. Like I'm a very like anxious person, so I could never just leave, you know, month by month. Like maybe this month I'll have like one good gig, maybe
Yeah,
four,
yeah,
then zero.
yeah. I
Like
have to be
that would just
like
freak
a
me
risk
out.
taker. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard because like you think about it. Like I was like watching a thing about like Nirvana, and they were like, you know, Kurt Cobain. He didn't really even want to make money. His whole point was to be like very punk and not make money, and it
hmm,
kind of made him upset when he was successful.
yeah,
Because he kind of wanted to live out the van, live out the back of the car, and then when all the other stuff came, it was like too much because he kind of wanted to be very small, kind of hardcore effort, and believe in it, and then maybe struggle through it, and then when he got all the recognition, it kind of didn't work for him.
yeah,
Which seems to happen sometimes to some musicians, like okay, they want this dream, but if they get it, then they don't want it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I get
You
that.
know, so it's always kind of hard. Like you're kind of like as a musician, you want to get to the place where people can hear you and people can feel what you're doing, but you
Mhm.
don't want it to like steal you because sometimes
Yeah,
like as a musician, like the fans can want so much or the business can want so much that you actually lose sight of what you originally were doing it for
yeah. What you thought was important for your music. Hmm.
because they kind of got to be like level headed to the point where okay, well I believe in it. And it's, I guess, the choice you make as an artist. Like you're saying, like you want to do it the way you want to do it. You want to control what's going on. You don't necessarily want to get to the top 50 or top 10 and then lose like your soul or lose what
Yeah.
you want to do or how
Hmm.
you want to do it because now you've got a manager saying you've got to do this or a label saying you've got to do X and you got to show up here and you got to do this. And so then it's not fun because that wasn't what you were trying to do.
Yeah. Also, because I think it depends, like, you know, whatever phase of your life you're facing, then your music sort of like evolves with it. So, I mean, you're like a new soul artist today, it doesn't have to be in that bracket like forever, you know. I think you can sort of like change and have some new style that depends just like on the experience that you make, your life, your music, and everything. So,
Yeah, because I think the one
good
thing if you
not
get
to have brackets, you know.
yeah, I think what happens to some big artists is like you make that big song, right? And you get known for that. And then for
Hmm.
the next 20 years, you got to do Hotel California every night,
Yeah,
right?
no,
And then you've got like maybe 200 songs, and you might not want to play Hotel California. You might want to play a deeper track
yeah,
that means a lot to you, but the fans like you got to play Hotel California.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and I think Elvis got that. You know, all the big artists, like, they get to this point where, like, you got to play what the fan wants more than what you want to do. And I understand what the fans want. They want that, and I'm a fan. I probably want to hear Purple Rain every night. But man, I saw that Prince. He got to a point where he didn't want to play it, and he didn't. He actually bucked the system. He said, "I'm not playing it." And for like 10 years, he actually went through a phase where he didn't play the hits. He only played like new material,
mm-hmm.
and everybody said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." And he didn't care. He just did it,
Yeah. That's
which I
great.
thought was pretty cool for a big artist to actually like do that, because most of the time they don't. Most of the time they get forced into having to play the hit. And I like the fact that he still had kind of this indie feel, even though he's this mega star. He would go and do these small shows and like do nothing but new songs.
Yeah,
And people were like, "What?" And he's like, "That's what he did." He's like, he didn't care. He's like, that's what he wanted to do.
yeah.
Um, so I
That's
think that's cool. Like, I mean, you're in that kind of spirit. Like, you do song it different every night because that's the way you feel it. You're
mhm.
writing from your heart, putting it together in kind of an old school way. And I think that's just I like that. I think that's like what I tend to gravitate toward are singer songwriters, who really put a lot into their work and believe in it. And I think that's like you Lulu, you have that. So that's cool.
Thank you.
So I think, like, I guess we kind of talked about like almost all the issues, and I guess the thing is, like, for 2021, are you actually in the middle of working on a new project?
Yes, so I'm currently working on a new EP, which would be my first in Italian. I
Oh,
never
awesome.
really written in Italian, but now I feel, as I was saying before, like, Italy wasn't much into new soul, like R&B a lot before, or at least like how I saw it. Now instead there's like this new wave that it's more like affirmed day by day, and I feel like I would be more understood doing my style of music in Italy now. So other than that, so I'm working on this EP with two great producers in Italy, Emanuele Trilla and Benjamin Ventura. We haven't met yet, which is crazy, but we were introduced by a common friend, and we've just been working together, sort of like online. But it's just great how amazing they are at just getting your songs, just playing like two chords and voice into a whole new level. So some songs are like sort of ready. I mean, I still have to record the voice on them, but I think, I mean, it will hopefully be done by the end of the year. It's just like I really had a good connection with them, and I would love to just record it together with them. They're based in Rome, in Italy, so hopefully, if COVID leaves us alone, I could go this summer and complete the project, or maybe we would do it, recording my part in New York and their part in Italy. But yeah, I'm kind of liking like writing in Italian. I never really did it before, so I'm curious to get people's feedback on that once the record gets released. I think very few people have heard me sing in Italian because I almost never really did, just because the type of music that I do, I feel like it always had like a better like fitting with
In
English
English, yeah, because the soul is kind of an,
language.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's American kind of construct coming from like, African American kind of blues and gospel, and it kind of comes from that. So that's why people would probably want to sing it in the language. But I think it's really cool to have like foreign language um, versions of music, because I actually was living in Tokyo and I listened to a bunch of Japanese bands like doing like grunge in
yeah,
2004, and I was like, wow, it's like their interpretation of what Pearl Jam and Nirvana sounded like with Japanese language, and it was
yeah,
actually important to actually hear them sing it in Japanese rather than trying to have them do it in English, because
yeah,
there was something about the Japanese language, the way they used it in the song that you needed to hear it in Japanese. So I'm a big believer that like if it's actually cool to hear the language and cultural differences that language have. And I think that would really sound awesome. I think that you could probably bring something to that form.
Yeah.
Um,
I will
doing it.
send it to you once it's out.
Yeah, I
For
definitely will listen to it because I listen to all kinds of everything. So
awesome.
I
Yes.
think that's a cool project. I think people should be on the lookout for that. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
So I think we're near the end of the show. I'm glad to have you on, Lula. We've been streaming live on my Facebook, and this will actually be permanently on that channel. And then we're going to push it to YouTube, and then we'll have audio versions of this on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I'll send you those links as they get created. They have to kind of transfer.
Yes.
But yeah, it's great to have you on the program. It's cool. Like, and once you have that project, I know it's in Italian, but we can still talk about it. And
yes, I'll
and
be happy to be back when
yeah, we'd love to do that.
the time comes. Yes, awesome.
Thank you, Lula. Everybody go out and we're going to have the hyperlinks for this. We do show it right now and you can't click it, but you'll go out here and this is her Spotify. And if you click that, you'll get right into it and listen to it and tell your friends and push it to everybody you know. If you dig it, like that's what people forget. Like if you dig an artist, let everybody you know understand how much you like it.
yeah, that's the best word to mouth.
Yeah, sharing music is a big part of the whole community of music. So I think that's why we do this, to kind of share new artists with people. So we're glad you're on the program. Thank you very much for being on.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Have a good night.